Chapter 626. The competition started. 3. Young Luo Feng pondered for quite a while and asked, "Is there any news about my second uncle?" "Well," Qin Yuan scratched his head, "Master Qingye hasn't returned to the general's estate. I don't know where he's at." Feeling her heart skip a beat, young Luo Feng frowned, a worried look in her eyes. It had been a year, and second uncle hadn't returned to the general's estate. Where could he be? Did he have an accident? "Mistress, don't worry." Noticing the worry of young Luo Feng, Qin Yuan hurriedly comforted her. "Master Qingye must be fine. He probably went somewhere for cultivation. I think he will come back soon." "I hope so." Young Luo Feng loosened her tightly knitted brows. "If second uncle doesn't show up after the competition, I will go to the forest of no return to search for him." The physician competition was held in a square. As soon as the sun rose, the square had been filled with people. All the people sat down in perfect order and waited quietly. After a moment, the yellow-robed Lin Yachting walked in, followed by many disciples of the association. With light steps, she looked noble and elegant, like a princess. Lin Yachting looked around and paused when she spotted young Luo Feng, but she quickly withdrew her sight. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the referee of this physician competition. I promise I'll hold the scales even and never bend the rule for personal gain." Lin Yachting looked quite resolute. "Now, let me introduce the rules for the trial competition. The trial competition is held by the Physician Association, so it'll be about medical skill. I will distribute a patient to each of you, and you shall cure your patient in the prescribed time. If you can't do it, you'll fail to pass the trial competition. Do you understand?" Hearing Lin Yachting's words, the young physicians all shouted excitedly, "Yes." "Good, I'm going to distribute patients to you." Lin Yachting looked at young Luo Feng again, and an unfathomable light flickered across her beautiful eyes. "Young Luo Feng, in order to woo you to my side, I have to play a trick. Otherwise, if you successfully defeat your rivals, I'll have to contend with the other elders of the association for you. So you can't pass the trial competition." Lin Yachting took a deep breath. As long as she could make the other elders give up the thought of wooing young Luo Feng, she wouldn't mind playing dirty. Soon, a group of patients were carried into the square and then distributed to the physicians. Staring at the young man groaning in front of her, young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes, a wicked gleam in her eyes, and she coldly said, "He is not ill." In this quiet square, her words were clearly heard by everyone. "What are you talking about?" The young man's face changed, and he shouted angrily, "I am dying of pain here and you say I'm not ill. Are you really a physician? Your medical skill really sucks. How can you conclude that I am not ill even without feeling my pulse?" Young Luo Feng glanced at him wickedly. "I'd like to ask you, why are you pretending to be ill?" "Pretending to be ill?" Sitting among the audience, Elder Rong was stunned, and he turned his surprised eyes from young Luo Feng to Lin Yachting, who was standing on the stage, his eyes filled with shock. To his surprise, Lin Yachting would do such a thing. As long as the young man insisted he was ill, she could announce that young Luo Feng's medical skill was poor. As a result, many elders who wanted to woo young Luo Feng would give up the idea. Chapter 627. The competition started. 4. Lin Yachting slightly frowned, glanced at young Luo Feng and said, "We chose these patients through a rigorous process. There can't be any mistake. There must be something wrong with his body. Miss Yun, you'd better feel his pulse first." "No," young Luo Feng shook her head and insisted, "there's no problem with his body." The young man lying on the stretcher seemed to really be in pain. With a cold sweat on his forehead, he looked quite pale. "Look at me, do you still think I'm pretending to be ill?" The young man gnashed his teeth and shouted angrily, "You're really a quack. You claim I'm faking it just because you can't cure my disease. How can a quack like you be allowed to participate in the physician competition?" On the stage, Lin Yachting watched the farce without any expression, a grim gleam in her eyes. She slightly raised the corners of her lips, but soon she became expressionless again. Young Luo Feng's medical skill was not bad, because she could find out that the young man was pretending to be ill. Even Elder Zhang of the Physician Association might not be able to find out the real condition of his body. That was because she had used some special means to make the young man look seriously ill. It was like a cloaking. Except her, no one knew that he was faking it. Ahem. A dry cough came from the stage. Then an old man standing next to Lin Yachting slowly came down the stage. As if walking on air, he reached the front of young Luo Feng in the blink of an eye. The lady insists the young man is pretending to be ill, while he says he isn't. Then, let me judge whether he is faking it or not. The old man stroked his beard and glanced at Lin Yachting on the stage. If I find that anyone abuses their power for a private grudge and cheats in the competition, I will definitely report it to the president. Though the Physician Association used to shield Medical City, they wouldn't allow any fraud in the physician competition. Otherwise, their sacred image would be damaged. Saying this, the old man bent down and put his fingers on the pulse of the young man, and then he frowned and stood upright after pondering for quite a while. The young man's pulse is quick, and his pain is real. But it's strange that I can't tell what illness he has with my experience. I'm only sure that he is really ill. The old man was quite honest and frankly admitted that he couldn't diagnose the young man's illness as if he wasn't afraid of losing face in the public. Elder Rong was shocked, his eyes filled with astonishment. Elder Lan Hong was quite respected in the Physician Association. He never lied, nor would he shield Lin Yachting. Now even he had said that the young man was not pretending to be ill. Was young Luo Feng's diagnosis really wrong? No. He trusted young Luo Feng's strength. Since she had said that the young man was faking it, there must be some reason. Elder Rong had firm faith in young Luo Feng. At the thought of this, Elder Rong tried to suppress the uneasiness in his heart and gazed at the two. Tut, I don't know where this woman stole an invitation card from. How dare she come to participate in the competition with this terrible medical skill? On the square, the genius physicians who were invited to the competition began to talk about young Luo Feng mockingly, their eyes filled with disdain for her. I think she said the man was pretending to be ill because she knew she could not cure him. Even Elder Lan Hong has confirmed that the man really has something wrong, so he is not pretending to be ill. Chapter 628, Punishment for Lying 1. As if not hearing the sarcasm of those people, young Luo Feng slowly walked to the young man and looked down at him. Do you know what punishment you'll get for lying to me? The young man's face greatly changed, and a grim light flashed through his eyes. Elder Lan Hong has already examined my body and proved that I do have some illness. How can you still insist that I am faking it? The onlookers were whispering to each other, their eyes filled with ridicule for young Luo Feng. This woman is really shameless. Would the Physician Association cheat her? She is just passing the buck to conceal the fact that her medical skill sucks. Looking a little bit anxious, Elder Rong kept winking at young Luo Feng. Then, he stood up and when he was just about to defend her, she suddenly moved. Bang! She grabbed the young man by the arm, slammed him hard onto the ground and trampled on his chest, her eyes filled with arrogance. What are you trying to do? Glaring at young Luo Feng, the young man growled and struggled to get up. Everyone was startled and none of them expected that young Luo Feng would directly attack a patient in the Physician Association without scruples. Lin Yachting slightly frowned and winked at a man standing next to him. Getting her message, he jumped to his feet and scolded harshly. How dare you, young Luo Feng? How can you attack a patient just because you are incapable of curing him? An immoral person like you doesn't deserve to be a physician. Who the hell gave you an invitation card and allowed you to show up here? Young Luo Feng glanced at him indifferently as if he was just a clown, and she didn't even bother to say a word to him. Choping. At this time, Lin Yachting stood up and said hypocritically, the medical pavilion gave her the invitation card, which was permitted by me. After all, according to her previous performance, she is really qualified to participate in the physician competition. Sister Yachting, it was just hearsay, which has been proven totally wrong. Maybe she paid people to brag about her medical skill. I think this woman just has no medical skill. Choping sneered with contempt and cast a sideways glance at young Luo Feng with narrowed eyes. And, Sister Yachting, have you forgotten how she treated you before? You were kind enough to make Master of Medical City apologize to her, but she rejected your apology and insulted you. Why are you still speaking for her? Choping sneered and stared at young Luo Feng coldly. Over the years, he and Lin Yachting had played this kind of duet a lot. He played the bad guy while she played the good one. He spoke out her mind for her, and then she would play nice and say something sweet. But he wasn't forced to do this because he was willing to do anything for her. Lin Yachting shook her head. I've told you that we should render good for evil. Did you forget that? Besides, Medical City was in the wrong, so we should apologize to her. Most importantly, I think young Luo Feng is a diamond in the rough, so even if she fails to pass the trial competition, I still want to accept her. Chapter 629, Punishment for Lying 2. Sister Yachting, don't speak for young Luo Feng. A diamond in the rough. She's just a trash. You want to give her a chance because you feel guilty for what Medical City did to Yun Qingye, but she is totally ungrateful. Shut up. Lin Yating's face darkened. Choping, you must remember, no one in this world is a trash. Even if young Luo Feng's medical skill is really poor, I'm sure I'll make her an excellent physician through training. Young Luo Feng, with her hands around her chest, smiled wickedly, narrowed her eyes and watched their duet. Though no one noticed, she clearly spotted Lin Yating winking at the man just now. Obviously, it was Lin Yating who told him to speak these words. After saying this, Lin Yating turned to young Luo Feng and smiled elegantly. Miss Yun, don't worry. No matter whether you pass the trial competition or not, I'll accept you as my disciple as the compensation to the Yun family. She meant that she would accept young Luo Feng, not because of her strength but to compensate the Yun family. This indirectly proved that young Luo Feng had no strength. Some elders who wanted to woo her would back down. In order to woo young Luo Feng to her side, Lin Yating had really tried every possible means. Unfortunately, what worked for others didn't necessarily work for young Luo Feng. If you really want to make it up to me, kill Lin Jie and his son. Young Luo Feng raised the corners of her lips and smiled domineeringly. I won't stop until Medical City is wiped out. If it were someone else, he would be enraged by young Luo Feng's words, but Lin Yating still spoke in a friendly way with a gracious smile on her face. I know you are still angry, but it doesn't matter, I can wait for you. As long as you pledge your loyalty to me, I can teach you all my medical skills as the compensation to you. The crowd was in an uproar. The physicians who participated in the trial competition all forgot to treat their patients, but looked at young Luo Feng indignantly and enviously. They hated young Luo Feng's ungratefulness and envied that she could join the physician association without passing the trial competition. Why couldn't they get such a good chance? Young Luo Feng was still trampling on the young patient who was out of breath, his eyes bulging and bloodshot. You want to instruct me on medical skills? She glanced at Lin Yating wickedly and smiled grimly, but, since you know me so well, don't you know what had happened to the last person who wanted to instruct me? 2 years ago, on the ship on the Qin River, Mu Wuxuang claimed in public she was going to instruct young Luo Feng only to be smacked hard in the face. It was known to almost everyone in the Longyuan kingdom. Lin Yating, who had already collected all the information of young Luo Feng, certainly knew the widely known story. So her face turned stiff and she forced a smile. I just want to help you. No matter how strong young Luo Feng's medical skill was, she could no longer turn the tables. Young Luo Feng. Seeing Lin Yating being bullied by her, Choping flew into a great rage. You are really unreasonable. Sister Yating just wanted to help you, but you humiliated her like this. Besides, take your foot off the patient or else don't blame me for being rude to you. Attracted by the confrontation between young Luo Feng and Lin Yating, the crowd had forgotten the poor patient who was still trampled underfoot by young Luo Feng. Chapter 630, Tianya showed up coolly. 1. Sorry, I forgot him. With a wicked smile on her lips, young Luo Feng moved her feet away, grabbed him by the collar and dragged him up from the ground. I'll give you one more chance. Tell me, who made you pretend to be ill? The young man's face changed and he growled, I told you I'm not pretending. Really? Young Luo Feng raised the corners of her lips and threw the young man to the front of Lan Hong. Feel his pulse again. Lan Hong was stunned, but he still crouched down and put his fingers on the pulse of the young man. Then he looked startled and said incredulously, it's impossible. Just before his pulse was beating abnormally, so how did it become normal now? According to his current pulse, he is in good health. That's impossible. A terrified look flashed through the young man's eyes, and he shouted indignantly, my body really has something wrong. You are talking nonsense. His body trembled uncontrollably as he spoke. If he couldn't finish the task Choping assigned to him, his wife would be in danger. But he didn't understand what had happened and why his pulse would suddenly become normal. Before he came here, Choping gave him a bowl of medicinal soup. It was the soup that messed up his pulse, and made him feel great pain. He almost succeeded, but why was there a sudden change at the critical moment? Suddenly, as if thinking of something, the young man turned to young Luo Feng, his eyes full of fear. It was this woman, it must be her. Just now, when the woman stepped on him, he clearly felt a trace of spiritual energy entering his body. It was the spiritual energy that worked and invalidated the medicinal soup that he had taken. Lin Yachting frowned tightly and looked at Choping standing next to her, a sharp gleam in her beautiful eyes. Noticing the look in her eyes, Choping felt so anxious that he ignored Lan Hong's position in the Association of Physicians and hurriedly said, "Elder Lan Hong, all the patients have been strictly selected, so how can there be any mistake? Your diagnosis must be wrong. He can't be a healthy man." Looking impatient, Lan Hong coldly glanced at Choping. "So you think my medical skills are so poor that I can't even diagnose whether he is healthy or not?" The crowd suddenly quieted down. No matter the disciples of the Physician Association or those who came to attend the competition, all the people kept silent. It seemed that this change was totally unexpected and to everyone's surprise. Elder Lan Hong, finally relieved, Elder Rong got up from his seat and chuckled, "How about asking all other elders to diagnose the patient? Then we can all be convinced of the result." "Okay," Lan Hong nodded and said coolly, "Guards, invite all the elders of the association to come here, telling them there is something for them to decide on." "Yes." Taking his order, one of the disciples left, and soon the figures of all other elders of the association came into the crowd's eyes from afar. After hearing Lan Hong's explanation, the elders came forward to diagnose the young man one by one, and even Lin Yachting's master Luo Fu was among them. Soon, the result had come out. Lin Yachting hurriedly cast a nervous look at Luo Fu only to see the latter shaking his head at her, and she felt her heart skip a beat. Chapter 631. Tianya showed up coolly too. Lin Yachting bit her lips tightly. The medicine that she asked Choping to give the young man couldn't be wrong. Besides, Lan Hong had confirmed that he was ill just now. But why did it change so quickly? What had happened during the last several minutes? With a complex look, Luo Fu didn't say anything. He was the one who asked Lin Yachting to do this. But even though he wanted to say the young man was ill, he couldn't say so when witnessed by so many elders. So he sighed helplessly, "He really is not ill." A healthy person was taken as a patient in the trial competition. Everyone knew what it meant. Therefore, the whole square was in an uproar. Why did the young man insist he was ill even though he was actually healthy? This made us misunderstand the girl. Do you think there is still any healthy person among the patients distributed to us? It seems that the Physician Association is not that reliable. If we can't diagnose the patient's illness, will we also fail to pass the trial competition? Listening to their discussion, all the elders present looked bad, and some grumpy elders directly hurled abuse. "Luo Fu, this physician competition is hosted by your disciple. Why did this happen? You must give us an explanation." "Exactly, give an explanation to the participants, or else the association's fame will be damaged." Luo Fu's face darkened, and he turned to Choping and asked, "Choping, what's wrong with you? I asked you to help Yachting, and you have made such an unforgivable mistake." Choping was stunned. Looking at Luo Fu's harsh eyes, he helplessly sighed in his heart. He knew that Luo Fu wanted to sacrifice him to protect Lin Yachting. But it was he who was in charge of this. Lin Yachting just gave him some suggestions. "Master, I know I was wrong." With a bump, Choping got on his knees and lowered his eyes, a grim light flashing through his eyes. "Sister Yachting has nothing to do with these things. It's just that I really don't like young Luo Feng, so I wanted to expel her by some means." He raised his head and glared at young Luo Feng. Sister Yachting was so kind to her, but she was completely ungrateful. And I overheard that she wanted to frame up Sister Yachting. Luo Fu looked at Choping with surprise. She wanted to frame up Yachting. Why? Why? Choping paused. He just blurted out whatever came into his mind and hadn't worked out the details yet. Because. He clenched his fist, and came up with an idea, because she heard that Ghost Emperor had been invited to the competition and was going to serve as the referee. At that time, Ghost Emperor, as a referee, would meet Sister Yachting, so she wanted to hurt Sister Yachting out of jealousy. "Master, I did these things because I thought the best defense was offense." Hearing Choping's indignant words, some people who didn't know the real situation had believed him. Choping, what did you say? Lin Yachting slightly frowned. Did you really hear her? Young Luo Feng wanted to hurt me for this reason. From what Lin Yachting knew of Choping, she knew that he made these things up, but it didn't stop her from adding fuel to the fire. She knew that after today's event, it was completely impossible for young Luo Feng to swear allegiance to her. Chapter 632, Tianya showed up coolly 3. So, she didn't need to pretend anymore. Since young Luo Feng was unwilling to surrender, she could only die. Sister Yachting, I heard it by myself. I swear, Choping vowed. Young Luo Feng fell in love with Ghost Emperor, and she came here to see Ghost Emperor. But Ghost Emperor will not look at a shameless woman like her, so she is jealous of Sister Yachting for having the chance to get along with Ghost Emperor and tried to frame her. Choping said this with such a certainty that everyone believed his words. This woman looks quite decent, and I never expected that she is the kind of person who would resort to dirty tricks in order to get a man. Tut, never judge a book by its cover. What a shame, but I've heard that Ghost Emperor has no interest in women, so she's doomed to fail. As if not hearing the ridicule of the crowd, young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and looked at Choping on the stage. What else do you want to say? Why don't you speak up? Choping was stunned. He didn't understand why the girl could still be so calm facing his frame-up. Didn't she want to defend herself? At the thought of this, Choping gnashed his teeth and said, besides, I can prove that young Luo Feng's medical skill is not that good. When I was asking Ling Yin to pretend to be ill yesterday, I spotted her disciple who was eavesdropping on us. Yesterday, Lin Ruobai did play with milk tea nearby, which was found by Choping, who was talking with Ling Yin in his house at that time. Though Lin Ruobai didn't hear their conversation, it didn't prevent Choping from framing her up. Elder Rong sneered and asked sarcastically, then how do you explain the fact that Luo Feng easily exposed your lie? Haha, Choping said with contempt. Elder Rong, I can tell you why if you really want to know. Due to my carelessness, Ling Yin took the medicine too early, so the efficacy had expired earlier than I expected. Do you think it was really exposed by young Luo Feng? Hearing his words, Ling Yin moved his lips and wanted to say something. However, just then, Choping cast a cold glance at him, and he dared not spit out the words on the tip of his tongue, nor swallow them, like having a fishbone getting stuck in the throat. It's easy to prove my medical skill. Young Luo Feng glanced at Choping, paused and said, I can cure all the patients here in 10 minutes. Hearing her words, the crowd burst into laughter. Cure all the patients here in 10 minutes? Was she kidding? There were so many patients in the square that she might not be able to diagnose their illnesses within 10 minutes. How dare she boast like this? Young Luo Feng, Lin Yachting frowned and said coldly, you'd better take back what you've said. Otherwise you'll regret it. It's for your own good. I just don't want to see you lose face in public. As if not hearing Lin Yachting's warning, young Luo Feng just said, if I cure all the patients in 10 minutes, the winner's prize for this physician competition, Dragon Crystal Sword, shall be mine. Besides, I want Medical City to disappear. I want Medical City to disappear. How confident was she to speak these words at this moment? There was probably nobody else on the Long Xia continent who dared to say this. Chapter 633, Tianya showed up coolly 4. Lin Yachting's face finally changed. She could no longer keep her elegant manner and coldly stared at the girl in the square with her beautiful eyes, a chill gleam flickering across her eyes. Young Luo Feng, I promise you. No matter how strong her medical skill was, it would be impossible for her to cure so many patients within 10 minutes. Besides, even if she succeeded, so what? She couldn't do anything if she refused to keep her promise. Above all, the Physician Association would not allow the Medical City to disappear. Elder Rong, do me a favor. Young Luo Feng turned her head to Elder Rong and said slowly. What is it? Elder Rong smiled and asked. I'll write you a few prescriptions later. Please decoct the medicines for me and be sure to finish them within 10 minutes. Okay, Luo Feng, you can rest assured, I will do as you order. Elder Rong's face turned solemn. He knew this was very important, and young Luo Feng must trust him very much by asking him to do this for her. He would not let her down. I'm afraid you will need more hands to finish this task, said Elder Lan Hong, who remained silent until now, so I'll ask my disciples to help you. Elder Rong would refuse if it were another elder, for fear that the person might poison the medicine. But Lan Hong was different. He would never do such a thing. When the martial masters of the medical city were hunting Yun Qingye and the Association of Physicians chose to shield the medical city, only he stood out to oppose it. Because of this, he had been marginalized in the medical city. A moment later, a disciple of the association took out an incense burner and lit fragrant incense in it. As a breeze blew over, the incense slowly produced an intoxicating fragrance. You can start now. Lin Yachting flicked her sleeve and sat down, her cold eyes fixing on young Luo Feng, a smile hovering on her lips. In the physician association, anyone who dared to contend with her would end up losing. Not saying a word, young Luo Feng took a bag of silver needles from her sleeve, disinfected them with fire, and pierced one of them into a patient's body. She hasn't felt the patient's pulse. How can she just start the acupuncture? She doesn't take the patient's life seriously. How could she start the treatment before she examined the patient? It seems that Choping is right. She really doesn't have any strength. Everyone was shocked by young Luo Feng's actions, and even the elders of the Association of Physicians frowned. In their eyes, young Luo Feng was completely unconcerned with the patient's life. As a physician, how could she be so indiscreet about treatment? After acupuncturing one patient at a surprising speed, young Luo Feng moved to another patient in the blink of an eye. She was so fast that no one could catch her actions with their naked eyes. Before the time was up, she had acupunctured all the patients. Then the disciples of the medical pavilion and Lan Hong came over, each of whom was holding a bowl of medicinal soup. By merely smelling the medicinal soup, young Luo Feng knew which illnesses they were respectively used for and instructed the disciples to distribute them to the patients. Drink the medicinal soup, and all of you will recover. While young Luo Feng was saying that, the patients had already taken the medicinal soup. As soon as they took it, they felt that the pain in their body was being alleviated. Chapter 634, Tianya showed up coolly 5. Let me check their conditions. Lan Hong quickly walked to the patients, put his finger on their pulses, and he was stunned after feeling the changes in their bodies. Seeing this, the other elder also came to diagnose the patients one after another. How could it be possible? How could this be possible? Also surprised at his diagnosis, Luo Fu couldn't help but back up a few steps, his face pale. It's impossible. What about the other patients? Let me examine their conditions. At the thought of this, Luo Fu hurriedly elbowed an elder away and occupied his position. At first, Luo Fu was just shocked and then he became desperate. He had seen these patients before the competition started, and he knew very well about their conditions. But now he could feel that they were recovering. Did this girl really cure all the patients within 10 minutes? And she had diagnosed their illnesses without feeling their pulses. Luo Fu's face turned ghastly pale, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. He looked desperately at Lin Yachting on the stage, and a bitter smile appeared on his lips. Yachting was too careless this time. But no one could have imagined that this girl's medical skill would be so great. Even the president would be no match for her. Miracle, this is a miracle. Lan Hong looked at young Luo Feng with glowing eyes. Girl, are you interested in joining my faction? She shook her head. I'm not going to join the physician association. Oh, I see. Lan Hong felt disappointed, but instead of saying anything angry he just smiled. If you want to join in the physician association in the future, just tell me and you'll be greatly welcomed. Lin Yachting had also said this to her but gave her a totally different feeling. Lin Yachting made her feel she was condescendingly giving her alms, while now she could feel that Elder Lan Hong said this because he really appreciated her talent. Not answering Lan Hong, young Luo Feng smiled. Then she turned her eyes to Lin Yachting, raised her eyebrows and asked, I won. Now can you fulfill your promise? Taking a deep breath to suppress the resentment and jealousy in her heart, Lin Yachting said coldly, I can give you the dragon crystal sword. What about Medical City? Young Luo Feng asked, smiling. Sorry, I can't make the decision about Medical City. That was to say, she would not give her Medical City. Don't push us too hard, young Luo Feng. Seeing Lin Yachting was in trouble, Choping jumped up at once. Medical City is our subordinate. If we gave Medical City to you, what would people think of us? You'd better stop before going too far so as not to get yourself in trouble. Boom. As soon as Choping finished, the girl in the square slightly waved her hand, and soon, a powerful aura was released from her sleeves and slammed Choping down from the high stage. You talk too much. She glanced at Choping, her eyes filled with arrogance and unruliness. Yun Luo Feng. Lin Yating's face immediately darkened. I can't bear you anymore. You are just too rude. How dare you openly injure our disciple in the Physician Association? Are you defying the Physician Association? Yun Luo Feng turned around and stared at Lin Yating wickedly. The Physician Association. It's just a place with no credit. Whether you agree or not, Medical City must be destroyed. Chapter 635. Tianya showed up coolly. 6. Lin Yating sneered, if you are really capable of this, I won't stop you. Unfortunately, I don't think you have that ability. I would advise you to take care of the Yun family first, in case there are a bunch of dead bodies waiting for you when you get back to your family. Yun Luo Feng narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at Lin Yating coldly. What do you mean? You've offended too many people, Yun Luo Feng. The other people won't tolerate you as I do and may have rushed to the Longyuan kingdom to do something to your family. Boom. A powerful aura was released from the girl's body. Her eyes turned icy, and she said word by word, Lin Yating, if any person of the Yun family loses a single strand of hair, I will make you suffer in misery. Yun Luo Feng, I just warned you. After all, I won't do anything to your family, Lin Yating sneered, but I'm not sure whether someone else would do it or not. Luo Feng. Seeing Yun Luo Feng was going to burst into anger, Elder Rong quickly stepped forward and pressed her shoulder, saying softly, don't worry. Elder Ning is with the Yun family, so nothing will happen to your family. Besides, our master is also in the Longyuan kingdom recently. He is also very strong, so Lin Yating's men can't hurt them. But Yun Luo Feng would never allow anyone to hurt her family, even though these people couldn't. Elder Rong, please do me a favor. Yun Luo Feng said slowly, send your man to find my second uncle. He has gone to the forest of no return for cultivation because he wanted to have his revenge against Medical City. I don't want him to miss his chance for revenge. Nothing was more pleasant than killing your foe by yourself. That was why Yun Luo Feng didn't touch the master of Medical City when she met him in the Physician Association. Second uncle's trauma would not be healed unless he killed his enemies with his own hands. Okay. Elder Rong quickly agreed, I'll ask the disciples of the medical pavilion to search for Yun Qingya's whereabouts, and I will inform you as soon as I have his information. Although I'd rather have my second uncle finish Medical City, it doesn't mean I won't charge them some interest. Yun Luo Feng raised the corner of her lips and looked at Lin Yating with narrowed eyes. You want to fight with me, Yun Luo Feng? Lin Yating's face darkened, you'd better give it a second thought. I'm not Choping. You can't sneak attack me easily. Who said I'd sneak attack you? Yun Luo Feng gave a sneer. She moved her body and rushed towards Lin Yating. At this moment, she didn't conceal her powerful aura and released it fully. She is a sky-level spirit cultivator. Feeling her strength, Luo Fu was shocked. She is a sky-level spirit cultivator. God, Yating is in danger. Having no time to think, Luo Fu rushed to the front of Lin Yating and blocked Yun Luo Feng's attack for her. Boom. A powerful force struck at Yun Luo Feng's palm and forced her to move back a few steps, leaving a deep groove on the ground. You are really shameless. Elder Rong looked at Luo Fu with disdain. How can you have the nerve to fight with a teenage girl as an old man over 100 years old? Luo Fu coldly glanced at Elder Rong and turned his eyes to Yun Luo Feng, a killing aura around his body. Yun Luo Feng, I didn't expect that you were already a sky-level spirit cultivator at your age. I really appreciate you both for your talent and your medical skill. If you would like to be my disciple, I can forgive you. Otherwise, I can only kill you because you've offended the Physician Association. Chapter 636. Tianya showed up coolly. 7. Not able to stand him anymore, Lan Hong stood out and said, frowning, Luo Fu, how can you have the nerve to threaten a little girl? Besides, if Lin Yating had not threatened her with the life of her family, she would not have been so angry. I think we'd better just let it pass. What do you think? Threaten? Luo Fu sneered, when did Yating threaten her? She just reminded her not to be too arrogant so that she would not offend someone who she shouldn't offend, and bring a disaster to her family. Yating is being kind to her, but she is not grateful. Lan Hong helplessly shook his head, But you are threatening Miss Yun, aren't you? Why do you force her to acknowledge you as master? Lan Hong, you should mind your own business. Luo Fu frowned. If she doesn't want to be my disciple, I can only kill her. After all, she has provoked the Physician Association. If she is a member of the association she can be forgiven, but if she is not she has to die. Lan Hong smiled. With Miss Yun's talent, she doesn't need to be your disciple at all. Besides, you are not the only elder of the association. She doesn't have to be your disciple. Reminded by Lan Hong's words, all the other elders realized that there was a chance for them and hurried towards Yun Luo Feng. Miss Yun, don't listen to Luo Fu. You don't have to acknowledge him as master. You can become my disciple. With my protection, Luo Fu, the old fool, dare not do anything to you. Why should Miss Yun become your disciple? I think I'm most suitable for her. If she acknowledges me as master, I will not only protect her but also protect her family. Miss Yun, I'm so sorry about your second uncle. If you become my disciple, I will avenge your second uncle. Strength talked in this continent, so everyone was very realistic. If Yun Luofeng was still a trash, they would only take sides with Luo Fu rather than speak these words. They behaved like this because of Yun Luofeng's extraordinary medical skill and her great talent. Luo Fu angrily stared at these betrayers, his old face all black with anger, and he snapped, "What are you doing? Yun Luofeng is messing with the Association of Physicians, but you're still fighting for her. Luo Fu, save it. We know that you want to make Miss Yun your disciple. But you've done so many bad things to her. How can she agree to become your disciple? As long as she joins the Physician Association, you can do nothing to her." Hearing Luo Fu's words, all the elders looked at him with contempt. In their eyes, nothing was more important than Yun Luofeng now. When they were scrambling for Yun Luofeng, all of a sudden, a strong aura came from the nearby sky and instantly attracted the attention of all the people. When the people looked up, a snow-white figure came into their eyes. An old man, with his hands clasped behind back, was walking on the air. He was as elegant as an immortal, and his step was so light that it looked like white lotus flowers blossoming under his feet. He also had a powerful aura around him. Also noticing the old man, Yun Luofeng slightly raised her eyebrows. He looked totally different from that brazen old man in her memory. "What are you quarreling about?" Speaking with a cool voice, the old man slowly walked down from the air, as if there was a stairway under his feet, and he was walking down the invisible steps. Chapter 637, Lest you should become complacent. Looking at the old man, the elders all smiled obsequiously at him. No longer quarreling with each other, they hurried forward and said respectfully, "Master Tianya, you've come." Tianya. Hearing how the elders addressed the old man, the people who had not seen Tianya before were surprised at first, and then an ecstatic look appeared in their eyes. It seemed that it was the right move for them to come to this physician competition because they met the godly Dr. Tianya here. Surrounded by the elders, Tianya kept that immortal-like demeanor and looked like a totally different person from that little old man who kept bugging Yun Luofeng. If Yun Luofeng hadn't known Tianya well, perhaps she would have taken him as a respected old man. "Tell me, what were you fighting about?" Tianya gently frowned and asked coolly. Well, for fear that Luo Fu might put the blame on others, Lan Hong quickly stood out to explain. This girl and a disciple of Luo Fu are enemies, but Luo Fu wanted to coerce Miss Yun to be his disciple because of her great talent. And he claimed that if Miss Yun wanted to survive, she would have to acknowledge him as master. However, other elders also want to take Miss Yun as their disciple, so we were talking about that. Oh, with that immortal-like demeanor, Tianya asked, "You want Luofeng to be your disciple? Then how should I address you if she becomes your disciple?" At this moment, Tianya's face turned sullen. He didn't expect that he was only a few days late, and so many things had happened. In particular, how dare these people force Yun Luofeng to become their disciple? In that case, shouldn't he call them Grand Master? This was simply unbearable for a person as proud as him. "What do you mean, Master Tianya?" Not understanding his meaning, Lan Hong paused and asked carefully. What do I mean?" Tianya looked so angry that his face was all black. "I've made myself clear. If Luofeng becomes your disciple, then should I call you Grand Master when I meet you?" Boom. Like being struck by a bolt from the blue, everyone shuddered and looked at Tianya with an astounded look. What did he say? If Yun Luo Feng became their disciple, he would have to call them Grand Master. Only a master's master would be called Grand Master. So Tianya was telling them that Yun Luo Feng was his master. Luo Fu's face turned pale, his old body shaking in the breeze, and he hurriedly supported himself on the tree pole beside him so that he would not fall to the ground. Did I hear him wrong? I must have heard him wrong. I think I should have my ear treated. How can Yun Luo Feng be the master of Tianya? I must have heard him wrong. Yes, I must have heard Tianya wrong. This could not be possible. Luo Fu comforted himself in his heart, but before he had forced himself to believe this, he saw Tianya walking to Yun Luo Feng. With a cool smile on his old face, he looked like an immortal and no one dared to disrespect him. Girl, I'm sorry I'm late. He smiled coolly, totally different from the brazen little old man in Yun Luo Feng's memory. Tianya, Yun Luo Feng touched her nose and smiled wickedly, I'll give you 99 points for your entrance, but I'll take off 1 point lest you become complacent. Chapter 638, Come the hell out. Completely at a loss, Tianya looked at Yun Luo Feng in confusion. What does that mean? Generally speaking, you have overacted, and I prefer the brazen version of you. When Tianya heard her words, his old face fell and his eyes were full of grievance. Luo Feng, there are so many people here. Save me some face. Face. Young Luo Feng gently stroked her chin and asked with a faint smile, do you still have any face? The corners of Tianya's mouth twitched hard. After all, what Yun Luo Feng said was true that he didn't have any face in front of Luo Feng. Ma, Master Tianya. Greatly shocked, an elder said with a trembling voice, Are you serious? Yun Luo Feng is really your master? Tianya frowned impatiently, turned to look at him and snorted, do you think I'm joking? I dare not. Tianya had a special status in the Physician Association. Would he dare to question him? But, thinking of what they had just done, the elders all wished they could find a hole in the ground to hide. If they had taken Yun Luo Feng as a disciple, how would Tianya have to call them? They didn't dare to think of the result. Who said he wanted to take my master as his disciple just now? Arrogantly raising his chin, Tianya glared at the crowd in the square, and shouted coldly, come out at once. At that moment, everyone's eyes turned to Luo Fu, and the meaning in their eyes was obvious. Gulp. Luo Fu swallowed hard and backed up a few steps. Being stared at by Tianya, he felt his heart shivered. Ma, Master Tianya, I was just kidding. Saying that, he glared at Lin Yachting, who was standing beside him stupefied. She didn't tell him about Yun Luo Feng's relationship with Tianya. Otherwise, he would never try to forcibly take her as a disciple. However, he wronged Lin Yachting, because she wasn't aware of their relationship either and didn't know that Tianya had recognized Yun Luo Feng as master. Looking at Luo Fu's blaming eyes, Lin Yachting clenched her fist and lowered her head, and an icy light flickered across her beautiful eyes. Yun Luo Feng, I'll make you pay for what I suffered today. Kidding. Tianya sneered and said sarcastically, if I kill you and tell you it's just a joke at your grave, what will you think? Luo Fu's face changed. Master Tianya, although our president respects you very much, I'm still a member of the Physician Association. Aren't you rude to speak to me like this? Ha ha. Tianya laughed, his laughter filled with rage, you threaten me with the Physician Association. Fine. Li Chuan, you asshole, come the hell out now. Li Chuan was the president of the Physician Association. Hearing Tianya's words, everyone stared speechlessly at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Though they knew that their president quite respected Tianya, they didn't expect Tianya would treat the president so impolitely. Was there something they didn't know? Chapter 639, he was Tianya's disciple. Tianya. Just as the crowd was wondering, a helpless voice came out from the sky, and a navy-robed old man came into the people's sight. The old man looked over 50 years old, but wrinkles were hardly seen on his ruddy face. It would be hard to tell his real age if it were not for his gray hair. President. Seeing the old man who suddenly appeared, all the people in the square fell to their knees. Only Tianya and Yun Luo Feng were still standing motionlessly. Seeing this, Lin Yachting gnashed her teeth. She felt suffocated as if a hand was squeezing her heart. Why do I have to get on my knees, while Yun Luo Feng can still stand? One day, I will have all of these people grovel at my feet and beg for my mercy. Finally you've come out. Tianya snorted and ridiculed, so this is how you have ruled the Physician Association over the years. You unjustifiably shielded Medical City and indulged these people to bully the genius who came to participate in the physician competition. It's really a miracle that the Physician Association still exists being led by you. Tianya's words were very harsh, full of condemnation and satire. Li Chuan moved his lips but couldn't utter a single word to defend himself, because what Tianya said was true. Luo Fu's eyes lit up. He stood up from the ground and snapped at Tianya word by word. Master Tianya, we respect your medical skill and obey you because our president respects you, but that doesn't mean you can insult our president. No matter how strong your medical skill is and how powerful you are not allowed to treat our chairman so rudely. Even though the president respects you, you have to be polite to him. How could Luo Fu, who finally had a chance, give up easily? If the Physician Association and Tianya fell out, he would have the chance to kill them all. Luo Fu, shut up. Li Chuan's face changed, and he suddenly released a powerful aura that struck Luo Fu hard. Boom. Luo Fu's body flew away for a few meters. He spat out a mouthful of blood, looked at Li Chuan with shock and asked with a trembling voice, President, why? Luo Fu, do you know who you are talking to? How dare you speak to him like that? Li Chuan flicked his sleeves, his face sullen. Tianya can even beat me if he wants, not to mention just scold me. With his eyes wide open, Luo Fu was shocked. What did the president's words mean? Tianya could even beat him if he wanted, not to mention just scold him. From the very beginning to the end, young Luo Feng, with her arms folded before the chest, was lazily leaning against the tree trunk behind her. She looked at Tianya after she had heard Li Chuan's words, an insightful gleam in her dark eyes. I didn't want to tell you about how Tianya helped me before, because Tianya didn't want me to. Li Chuan sneered. But now, I have to speak out because of your rudeness to Tianya. In those days, if it weren't for Tianya, there would be no physician association, let alone my status today. Feeling his heart grabbed by fear, Luo Fu moved his lips and wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't say a word under Li Chuan's cold glare. Li Chuan took a deep breath and said, I met Tianya when I was young. At that time, I knew nothing about medicine and was very seriously ill. In order to heal me, Tianya taught me medical skills. All of my medical skills were learned from Tianya, and I would have called him master if he hadn't refused me. So, now do you think he has the right to scold me? Chapter 640, took all the blame. Having no strength to support himself, Luo Fu sank down on the ground, his face ghastly pale, his heart filled with despair. Master. Lin Yachting hurried forward and supported Luo Fu to stand up. A grim look flicked through her lowered eyes, and she said in a voice that only two of them could hear. Master, take all the blame and I'll save you. Luo Fu was stunned. He looked up at his disciple and found that he had never known her. What do you want to do? Believe me, I can only save you if I get away with it. Listening to Lin Yachting's lowered voice, Luo Fu smiled bitterly, but he knew he had no choice. If Lin Yachting and he were both put into prison, they could only wait for death. Haha, with a bitter smile, Luo Fu stood up from the ground, gazed at Li Chuan standing in the air and sighed, President, I know I've committed an unforgivable crime. I pled guilty, and I'm willing to take all the punishment. He clenched his teeth and went on, but my disciple is innocent. She didn't know anything. President, please forgive her. Hearing his words, Lan Hong coldly glanced at him. Elder Luo Fu, she bet with Miss Yun and promised to give Miss Yun Medical City if she could cure all the patients within half an hour, but then she went back on her word. How do you explain this? Luo Fu felt his heart skip a beat but he didn't show it. I asked her to do it. I told Yachting not to promise young Luo Feng anything whether she succeeded or not. Yachting didn't agree with me, but she could only follow my order because I am her master. Yachting is a good girl. Please forgive her, President. Well, Li Chuan hesitated and turned to Tianya. Tianya, what do you think of it? Tianya slightly frowned, with a murderous look in his eyes, but just when he was going to announce his decision, young Luo Feng suddenly held out a hand and stopped him. Luo Feng. Tianya looked at young Luo Feng with surprise. From what he knew of young Luo Feng, she would not let Lin Yachting go. Why did she stop him? My second uncle hasn't come back yet. Her meaning was clear that except Yan Qingye, no one shall touch the medical city people. Thinking that Tianya didn't get her meaning, young Luo Feng repeated, my second uncle wants to have his revenge and kill those who hurt him with his own hands. Let Lin Yachting go. That is impossible. I will soothe Yan Qingye's sufferings over the years with these people's blood. Okay, sighed Tianya, now that you have made the decision, I'll spare these people's lives and leave them to your second uncle. Young Luo Feng raised the corners of her lips, Tianya, have someone watch them, in case they would escape before my second uncle comes back. Okay, I will do as you say. Tianya smiled and turned his eyes to Li Chuan, since Luo Fu is willing to take all the responsibility, throw him in jail. Let the association's court judge him. Besides, I don't think Lin Yachting is innocent, so I want you to restrict the personal freedom of all the people of Medical City. And interrogate Luo Fu with torture until he confesses his accomplices. Chapter 641, Guidance. Fear surfaced in Luo Fu's eyes, and he hurriedly grabbed Lin Yachting's hand and shakily said, Yachting, I can't last more than a few days. You must come to save me. I will. Lin Yachting held Luo Fu's hand before slowly straightening her body. Her eyes turned to Yun Luo Feng, and she lightly said, Yun Luo Feng, you won this time. I hope you can continue to keep defeating me after this. After saying that, she turned around and left without looking back. However, her hands involuntarily clenched beside her leg. Little Yun, Elder Rong finally recovered from his shock and shook his head before wryly stating, when I first met you, I thought you must be godly Dr. Tianya's disciple with your medical expertise. I never expected I would guess wrong. It turns out you are his master. This news was too shocking, so shocking that he nearly lost his ability to think. Yun Luo Feng shrugged, I didn't acknowledge it. Upon hearing this, Tianya's solemn face immediately became incredibly aggrieved, and he resentfully asked, then when will you finally acknowledge me? I don't accept disciples as old as you. However, I promised Xiao Bai earlier that I would give you a few pointers in medicine. When are you free? Young Luo Feng faintly smiled, a brilliant light radiated from her pitch-black eyes. Tianya's heart burst with emotions, and he nearly hugged young Luo Feng. Thankfully, she dodged fast and evaded from his bare hug. I'm free at any time. Tianya was uncontrollably excited, so excited that his entire geriatric face turned red. How about we start now? The old man was rubbing his palms, and his smile was as deplorable as it could be. It did not match his previous immortal-like aura at all. Everyone present was stupefied and could not believe that the deplorable old man in front of them was the prestigious godly Dr. Tianya. Could it be that he was accidentally switched just now? Girl, Elder Rong chuckled, can I listen on the side when you give guidance to godly Dr. Tianya? Young Luo Feng was silent for a moment before nodding. Yes, as long as you don't disturb me. Joy filled Elder Rong's heart, and he hurriedly agreed, Little Yun, don't worry, I absolutely won't make a single sound. After hearing them, all the elders from the Physician Association started growing restless. Miss Yun, can we also listen from the side? I guarantee that I won't disturb you. All the elders' eyes contained anticipation as they silently watched Yun Luo Feng. Young Luo Feng's hand lightly stroked her chin as she turned to Lan Hong. Back when my second uncle had his altercation with Medical City, how many people stood on the side of Medical City in a matter-of-course manner? Lan Hong started and thought briefly before saying, a conflict happened in the Physician Association back then. Half of the people believed Medical City wasn't at fault, and Yan Qingye was the one at fault. The other half kept silent. Back then, besides Lan Hong who opposed the Physician Association's decision, everyone else either stood on the side of Medical City or kept silent. After hearing his words, young Luo Feng smiled and said, some of you thought my second uncle was in the wrong, and the rest stayed silent about my second uncle's fate. Why do you think I should forgive your behavior and also help you raise your medical skills? She could understand the people who kept silent, but she could not accept it. It was due to their silence that second uncle suffered from many years of harm. Chapter 642. Let's go and settle the score with Medical City. Everyone lowered their heads, upset, and inwardly cursed the people of Medical City several hundred times. If it were not for them, why would Yun Luo Feng reject them? Little Yun, Elder Rong glanced at Lan Hong as he said, Lan Hong is the only one who raised an opposition towards the conduct of the Physician Association back then. Can he come and listen? Young Luo Feng slightly nodded, sure. She had always distinctly separated her gratitude and grudges. Although Lan Hong was not able to resist the majority's decision by himself, his heart was at least impartial and just. Based on this point alone, she would not reject his participation. All the elders looked at Lan Hong with envy, as though they wanted to replace him. If they had known it would come to this, they would not have sided with Medical City. Otherwise, they would not encounter their current fate. Li Chuan originally wanted to ask for Yun Luofeng's permission to listen from the side, but after seeing the dismal appearance of the other elders after being rejected, he unconsciously swallowed back his words. He was the one who stood out to shelter the people of Medical City back then. What right did he have to request Yun Luofeng to coach his medical skills? This Medical City has wretchedly harmed us all. Li Chuan lightly sighed and regretfully said. In everyone's eyes, since Yun Luofeng could make Tianya apprentice under her, it proved that her medical skills were already so strong that it incurred the wrath of the gods and people. If they could obtain her guidance, they would take fewer wrong approaches when treating illnesses. However, because of Medical City, they missed a great opportunity. Let's go and settle the score with Medical City. All the elders promptly acted and hurriedly walked towards the guest rooms. At this moment, they had already shifted all of their anger from the rejection onto the people of Medical City. Li Chuan also wanted to join but could only suppress the impulse in his heart after recalling his identity. Inside the extravagant guest room, Lin Jie could not resist pacing back and forth. His eyes now and then darted towards the door with impatience. If Lin Yachting did not fear that he would cause trouble again, she would not have prohibited him from going to watch the trials. Hence, he could only quietly wait for news inside the room. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps was heard from outside the door, and the room's door was pushed open. When he saw the woman who entered, joy appeared on his face, and he asked, Yachting, have you succeeded? Did that woman Yun Luofeng fail? Ha ha ha. As soon as he thought about how the young girl would lose all her face in public, his heart would have an indescribable satisfaction. However, Lin Yachting's expression was quite unsightly and clearly did not have any joy from having her scheme succeed. After seeing her expression, Lin Ji's heart skipped a beat. Yachting, what happened? Dad, Lin Yachting lightly bit her lips with a complicated emotion in her eyes. I failed. Yun Luofeng could tell that person was faking an illness with only one look and even exposed him on the spot. What? Lin Jie stumbled and heavily fell on the ground. His face was pale as he muttered, that's impossible. Your plan was flawless, how could it fail? Lin Yachting's eyes turned perplexed. Not only that, but I also made a bet with Yun Luofeng. If she could cure all the patients within 15 minutes, then it would be her win. The opposite and it would be her loss. Within 15 minutes, regardless of how talented Yun Luofeng is, she couldn't do it. 15 minutes, I reckon it's only enough for her to take their pulse. If they said that Yun Luofeng could treat all the patients by herself, perhaps Lin Jie would believe it. If it was within 15 minutes, he would not believe she could do it no matter what. Chapter 643, Yun Qingye 1. I also hoped for that. Lin Yachting's eyes darkened as she said, unfortunately, she really did it. Moreover, Medical City, it was lost due to my bet. Lin Jie jolted and abashedly said, Yachting. You are kidding with me, right? 15 minutes. Even Tianya couldn't do it. Does she have the power of heaven? Lin Yachting slightly lowered her eyes, hiding the malicious glint in her eyes. Of course Tianya can't do it. Tianya is her disciple. Lin Ji's pupils gradually widened. His gaze had already changed from its initial shock to fear. Inside his brain, only several words resonated. Tianya was Yun Luofeng's disciple. Godly Dr. Tianya, who had worldwide acclaim, was Yun Luofeng's disciple. This was more shocking than Tianya accepting Yun Luofeng as his disciple. Lin Jie climbed up from the ground and tightly clenched his fists. All of a sudden, as though he thought of something, he looked up and fixedly stared at Lin Yachting. Currently, the complexion of the woman in front of him was evidently pale, but she did not lose her former grace and indifference or her confident appearance. Yachting, you must have a solution, right? A ray of hope appeared in Lin Ji's eyes. Ever since you were young, your personality has been calmer than most people's, and your mind was also more clear-headed. I know you must have a way to save me. Lin Yachting sighed. There were many times where she wanted to give up on Medical City over the years, but in the end, she still could not do it. Medical City was the place that nurtured her. Lin Jie was her foster father. If she paid no heed to Medical City, wouldn't she be an ingrate? She could not bear that bad reputation. In order to save me, my master already cleared my name. Logically, I only need to know my place, and I can live the rest of my life safely, but I truly can't disregard Medical City. Her words meant, I could have abandoned you, but I will rescue you with all I have. A giant favor like this, your Medical City probably can't pay me back for the rest of your life. Yachting, Lin Ji's eyes brightened. I understand. I understand everything that you do for Medical City. I only want to know, how will you save Medical City? Lin Yachting was silent for a moment. There are 2 more days before the Ghost Emperor arrives. The Ghost Emperor. Yachting, what do you want to do? Lin Jie asked as he looked at Lin Yachting with some astonishment. The Ghost Emperor's strength is very strong. I heard that even the chairman isn't his opponent from Master. Lin Yachting slightly narrowed her eyes, an icy glint flashing through her eyes. I also assumed the position of a judge this time because Master wanted to let me near the Ghost Emperor. After all, if I managed this competition, I would have a chance to come into contact with the Ghost Emperor. Realizing what Lin Yachting wanted to do, there was some shock in Lin Ji's gaze. Yachting, you mean? I originally wanted to let it play out on its own. It wouldn't be a problem even if the Ghost Emperor didn't take a liking to me. Lin Yachting interrupted his words and looked out the window, a determined light shining from her eyes. However, this time, I can do nothing but put my all into it. If I become his wife, whether it's Medical City or my master, they can be saved. Yachting, Lin Ji's complexion finally improved, but there were still a few traces of worry in his heart. Your master has already fallen. I'm afraid the association will change the host of this competition to someone else. How will you get close to the Ghost Emperor then? Lin Yachting calmly smiled. I naturally have my way. You only need to remember one thing. No matter what Luo Feng does to you these next few days, you must endure it. I will avenge you in a few days. Chapter 644. Yun Qingye 2. Alright, a harsh light flashed through Lin Ji's eyes. I will let Luo Feng, that bitch, run rampant for a few more days. After the Ghost Emperor becomes my daughter's husband, I will make her understand the consequence of offending me. As soon as he thought of how the renowned Ghost Emperor would become his daughter's husband, his heart would become uncontrollably excited. He could already picture the Ghost Emperor and Lin Yachting getting married. Lin Jie, get out here. Boom. The door was harshly kicked open all of a sudden. Soon after, several elders rushed in from outside and surrounded the room in an instant. Lin Jie jumped in shock and shakily asked, What? What are you doing? Doing what? The leading elder evilly smiled. We are naturally doing, you and your son. After he finished speaking, that elder waved his hand, and a man wearing a long, brocade robe was instantly tossed out from the crowd and landed on the ground with a bang. Son. Seeing the man covered in bruises, Lin Jie turned pale with fright and rushed up, lending an arm to support the man's body. Son, how are you? Dad. Lin Hao grimaced in pain. What happened? Why are the elders of the Physician Association attacking our Medical City? Howard, it's nothing. With Dad here, nothing will happen. Lin Jie hurriedly protected his son and angrily glared at the people in front of him. When did I, Lin Jie, offend you as to cause all of you to beat up my son like this? Humph. The leading elder snorted. If it weren't for you, we would not offend Miss Yun and cause her to not coach us in medicine. Wasn't it enough for you to seek death yourself back then? Why did you have to drag our entire Physician Association down as well? Since we have nowhere else to vent our anger, we can only come find you. Then, he gritted his teeth and added, let go and do them. All the elders had long since been unable to resist the urge to wreak havoc, so powerful hits of spiritual energy slammed into Lin Jie one by one. However, because Lin Jie shielded Lin Hao in his embrace from start to end, Lin Hao did not suffer any harm. Lin Yachting glanced at this pair of father and son. Afraid that she would attract underserved misfortune, she silently retreated. It was unknown how much time passed before one of the elders stopped and helplessly said, forget it, we will temporarily spare them this time. In truth, we were also at fault for the matter back then. If we didn't help Medical City before distinguishing what was right and wrong, we would not end up like this. That's correct, we were in the wrong too. I really envy that old guy, Lan Hong. Since he was more sensible back then, he can go listen from the side. If we had known it would come to this, we would not have acted thus. All the elders were very regretful, but after thinking it through, they did not stay to make things difficult for the people of Medical City and walked out. Perhaps, they needed to find a good place to thoroughly reflect on their behavior over the years. However, they finally left. After seeing that everyone had departed, Lin Jie released a sigh of relief. Were you hurt? Dad, the Miss Yun who they spoke of, is she someone from the Yun family? Lin Hao tightly clenched his fists. Because Lin Jie was afraid that mentioning the Yun family would upset Lin Hao, he had never mentioned people of the Yun family in front of Lin Hao these past years. Even after coming to the Physician Association, he did not tell him that young Luo Feng came to participate in the competition. Now, after hearing Lin Hao's question, he grew silent. Chapter 645, Yun Qingye 3. Dad, tell me, is it those mutts from the Yun family? Veins popped out on Lin Hao's forehead, and his tightly clenched fists made cracking noises. Lin Jie helplessly sighed. However, it's Yun Luo Feng from the Yun family, she came. Yun Luo Feng, that bastard, Yun Qingye's niece. Lin Hao flew into a rage and furiously exclaimed, Dad, how did those mutts from the Yun family come to a place like the Physician Association? What right do cheap playthings like them have to step into a noble territory like this? Kill Yun Luo Feng for me immediately. Looking at Lin Hao's twisted appearance, Lin Jie's lips turned up in a bitter curve. I'm afraid we can't kill Yun Luo Feng right now. Why can't we kill that mutt? I don't care, I want you to kill her, the people from the Yun family as well. I want everyone from the Yun family gone. Yun Qingye, that bastard, defeated him in front of everyone back then. How could he tolerate a humiliation like that? If Yun Qingye did not die already, he definitely would make the experts of Medical City go and exterminate all the members of the Yun family. Unfortunately, in order to not upset Lin Hao, Lin Jie already ordered the people of Medical City to not let any news about Yun Qingye travel to his ears. Hence, Lin Hao still did not know Yun Qingye was still alive even now. However, calm down, the light in Lin Jie's eyes flickered a few times. Yun Luo Feng is the young genius invited here by the physician competition. The physician competition has a rule that no one is allowed to start fighting during the competition regardless of any of your grievances. Wait a few days, and Dad will kill her for you to vent your anger out, alright? Lin Jie did not dare to tell Lin Hao about the relationship between Yun Luo Feng and Tianya. Otherwise, it would be uncertain how upset Lin Hao would become. Anyway, Ghost Emperor would be his daughter's husband soon. With a son-in-law like Ghost Emperor, what scruples would they have about Yun Luo Feng anymore? Humph. Lin Hao snorted with contempt, but his complexion turned better. Young genius. How is she a young genius? Are the people of the Physician Association blind? They actually invited a bitch like that to participate in the competition. Yes, Lin Jie hurriedly agreed with Lin Hao with a face full of indulgence. The Physician Association is truly blind to have invited her to participate in the competition. How could that woman Yun Luo Feng compare with you, Howard? You are the true genius. Right, Dad, why did those elders of the association hit us? What relation did they have with Yun Luo Feng? Lin Hao touched his stinging cheeks and sucked in a sharp breath. Lin Jie started and unconsciously furrowed his brows. He was thinking about what perfunctory excuse he could tell Lin Hao. Dad, tell me, did Yun Luo Feng use her looks to seduce those elders to make them come and beat us? If the people of the Physician Association were beguiled by her, we might have some troubles later. Before this, Lin Hao had pasted the portraits of all the members of the Yun family in his room so that he could humiliate them. Hence, he naturally knew about Yun Luo Feng's appearance. Moreover, he was once stunned by that woman. Several times, while in bed with his concubines, he pictured her beautiful appearance in his mind. However, don't worry, the Ghost Emperor will quickly become your sister's husband. Who cares about those elders at that time? The Ghost Emperor. Lin Hao was briefly startled. Between the Ghost Emperor and the Physician Association, who is stronger? This. Lin Jie was silent for a moment again. The Ghost Emperor's strength is a profound mystery, so I don't know what level he has reached. However, Yachting said that the president of the Physician Association is not a match for him. Chapter 646, Yun Qingye 4. The president of the Physician Association was not a match for the Ghost Emperor. Lin Ji's eyes twinkled. Dad, will the Ghost Emperor really become my brother-in-law? Howard, did you forget? Lin Jie affectionately smiled. For the last 20 years, have any of the men who your younger sister took a liking to been able to escape from her palm? In the end, the Ghost Emperor is a man. As a man, how can he resist the temptation of beauty? Lin Hao nodded in agreement. That's true. After all, I am a man. As long as it's a good-looking woman, I want to take them. The Ghost Emperor and I must have the same way of thinking. He would only disregard beauties if he was impotent. Also, Dad, I have a request. I want young Luo Feng's body. Wait until I obtain her body, then kill her. As though recalling her celestially beautiful face, he lecherously licked the corner of his mouth and his squinted eyes emitted a licentious light. Howard, women like young Luo Feng would only dirty you, but as long as Howard likes it, I can leave her behind to be your concubine. Lin Jie wore his doting for Lin Hao on his face. Whenever he faced Lin Hao, his face always had a gentle smile. It had to be said that his spoiling had a connection with how Lin Hao became this prodigal. Dad, Lin Hao darkly smiled, a woman like that only deserves to serve me for a night. Even when she cries and begs for me to lay with her later, I won't give her a second night. A woman who isn't a virgin, I find her dirty. He already firmly believed that young Luo Feng must have used her looks to seduce all the elders, and this was why they came to vent her anger out for her. Since it was like this, she must have had some actual relationship with them. A dirty woman like that, what right did she have to be his concubine? At best, he would think of it as going to a brothel to pay a visit to a prostitute. And just like with prostitutes, he would not visit them a second time. At this time, on the rugged mountain road, Qingyan halted her steps. She leaned against the tree behind her with some fatigue and closed her eyes. Yun'er, are you tired? Yi Ling turned to look at Qingyan. A small, gentle smile appeared on his grave face. Qingyan opened her eyes and shook her head. It's nothing. Let's continue. Not long ago, they received news that the city master's estate in Medical City was incinerated. People said that the one who set the city master's estate on fire was their miss. If Miss came back, then she would definitely head to the Physician Association to participate in the competition. This was why Yi Ling and she hurriedly brought people to head over to lend her a hand. Alright, Yi Ling dotingly patted Qingyan's head with a warm smile on his lips. If you're tired, we can rest. After all, to hasten our journey, you haven't stopped to rest these past few days. Didn't you all not rest as well? Qingyan rolled her eyes. We are men, you are only a woman. I'm the leader of Raging Flame Corps, not a delicate woman. Qingyan's eyes exuded a determined light. I won't rest until I see Miss. The people of Medical City were also at the Physician Association, which was why she was rushing their trip this anxiously. She was afraid that young Luo Feng would encounter danger. Yi Ling sighed before saying, if you're tired, I don't mind carrying you on my back to walk. Chapter 647, Yun Qingye 5. No need. Qingyan braced herself to stand up. Yi Ling, if I was weak to the point of needing you to carry me, what right do I have to embark on the battlefield for Miss? It's late now, let's continue. After saying this, she firmly held the sword in her hand and planned to continue walking. However, at that moment, a sneering voice was suddenly heard and sent everyone into alert mode. People from the Yun family. I didn't expect to be so lucky that we would see people from the Yun family on our journey. Since it's like this, I will kill you first then head to Yun estate to bother the Yun family old man. As soon as the speaker finished talking, a countless number of figures appeared in the air and dropped down, surrounding them. Their leader was a middle-aged man. He was dressed resplendently, but his eyes were like an icy and gloomy poisonous snake, unsettling people. Yi Ling, the third prince of the Lujin kingdom, a subordinate of Yun Luofeng, and the vice-commander of Steep Corps. Qingyan, a maidservant who has accompanied Yun Luofeng since she was young, the commander of Raging Flame Corps. Looks like I encountered the right people this time. It was as though the middle-aged man was talking to himself, and there was a sneer on his lips. Who are you? After sensing his formidable aura, Yi Ling subconsciously shielded Qingyan behind him and sternly looked at the other party. I am the subordinate of Elder Luo Fu from the Physician Association. The man narrowed his eyes. I am under orders to go to the Yun estate to capture the Yun family old man. Initially, after Lin Yachting was rejected by Yun Luo Feng, she sent people to the Yun estate as a last layer of protection. If Yun Luo Feng did not agree to serve her, then she would use the lives of her family to threaten her. She had done this type of thing often. Unfortunately, at this time, the middle-aged man still did not know the unforeseen event that had occurred at the Physician Association and also did not know Luo Fu had stepped down and that Lin Yachting was powerless to protect herself. Otherwise, he would not dare to seek trouble from the Yun family no matter what. Qingyan, you need to be careful. Yi Ling's features darkened. This man is an intermediate rank earth-level spirit cultivator. The other people are all high-level spirit cultivators. Currently, within the core of the Yun family, only he broke through to low-rank earth-level cultivator not long ago. The strongest among the others was only a high-level cultivator. However, he could not contend against these people on his own. Thankfully, the Yun estate had Elder Ning and the master of the medical pavilion present, so a mere earth-level cultivator was not enough to deal with the Yun family. After all, Lin Yachting's news about the Yun family was from the time that Yun Luofeng was at the Yun estate and had no idea that the current Yun estate had two strong people keeping watch. Even if she knew, she could not do anything about it, because the strongest power that she could mobilize at the Physician Association was an earth-level spirit cultivator. This was why after Elder Rong initially heard her threats at the venue, he was not worried at all and even kept consoling Yun Luofeng. He understood that the experts sent out by Lin Yachting could not deal with the Yun family. These people were truly helpless against the Yun family, but they were a quite large threat to the Steel Corps who left the Yun estate. Charge! Kill them all! Darkness flashed through the middle-aged man's features as he coldly ordered, I want to make them understand the fate of being enemies with Yachting. In an instant, the people behind him all drew their weapons and speedily attacked the Corps from all sides. Yi Ling, let's battle together. Qingyan drew out her weapon in a flash and situated herself back to back with Yi Ling, her clear eyes containing a determined glint, even if I die, I still won't yield to the Physician Association. Chapter 648, Yun Qingye 6. The other members of the Corps all pulled out their weapon and joined the fight. The entire mountain road resonated with the sound of slaughter and blood covered the ground. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes, shifting his sight onto Yi Ling. Then, his body turned into a sharp sword and headed for Yi Ling. He could tell that Yi Ling was the strongest of this group, so he would kill him first. Yi Ling, careful! Seeing that the man was about to charge to in front of Yi Ling, with a speed that came from somewhere unknown, Qingyan shot toward him at lightning speed. Yunner! Yi Ling anxiously shouted and beheaded the enemy in front of him with the long sword in his hands. He hurriedly extended his hand to grasp a hold of Qingyan, but unfortunately, his fingers only reached her sleeve and pulled her sleeve down. Shortly after, he could only watch as Qingyan stretched her arms out to block the man with a face full of determination. Since you want to die for him, I'll help you. The man snorted and raised his long saber, slicing it toward Qingyan's neck. Yi Ling completely flew into a violent rage, and a frightening pressure emanated from his body and dealt with the row of people in front of him in an instant. Closely after, he flew toward Qingyan, wanting to stop the man's attack. Swish! Suddenly, a kunai flew from behind him and streaked through the air, leaving behind a long track in the air. As if he did not see that kunai, Yi Ling did not even dodge, and his hand stretched towards Qingyan, who was blocking the man. Then, that kunai did not hit Yi Ling. It was as though it had eyes of its own and swerved around him, piercing the middle-aged man's neck with a gurgle. The man froze, and the long saber slipped from his hand. He still did not know what had happened, and his body was already falling back. He died without closing his eyes. Yunner! By the time that the long saber hit the floor, Yi Ling already pulled Qingyan into his arms. His voice was shuddering, but more of it was obvious fear. Why did you have to be this foolish? Qingyan smiled, because you were my husband. I didn't want to watch you die. So I would rather die first. Qingyan, how could you be this selfish? Yi Ling tightly squeezed Qingyan's shoulders and could not resist bellowing, if anything happened to you for the sake of saving me, what should I do? I won't permit you to do this next time. Qingyan lowered her eyes, a smile appearing on her pretty face. Next time, perhaps she would be just as selfish. Only because she could not allow Yi Ling to fall in front of her. So she would rather she be the person who fell first. Right, Qingyan, let's thank our save. Yi Ling turned around, and the last word was not spoken before it got stuck in his throat. His eyes widened little by little, and his excitement was displayed on his face. Co-commander. In the air, a man stood with his hands behind his back, his long, cyan robe fluttering with the wind. His features were handsome, akin to a haughty, singly blooming green lotus, and his youthfulness was exceptional. Second Master. Qingyan was so emotional that tears were almost shed. Second Master, you finally returned. We already waited for you for more than a year. Moreover, Miss headed for the Physician Association. Her words were just uttered, and the youthful figure quickly disappeared into the sky. The direction that he was heading toward was evidently the Physician Association. Chapter 649, Yun Xiao is here. 1. Ever since Luo Fu landed in prison, he had experienced what was a life worse than death. Because of Lin Yating's and his actions, the host for the competition was also changed to Hu Po, a disciple of another elder. Hu Po, who was currently cultivating, was disturbed by the sound of footsteps. He lightly furrowed his brows and turned to look at the woman pushing open the door. Lin Yating, why did you come here? Hu Po coldly asked as impatience slowly crawled onto his face. Lin Yating overlooked it and gracefully smiled, stepping into the room. I heard that you will be going outside the city to welcome the Ghost Emperor tomorrow. That's right, Hu Po had a slight frown, but what does this have to do with you? Don't forget, you currently don't have any status inside the Physician Association. The light in Lin Yating's eyes flickered before she faintly smiled. Hu Po, I came here to seek a favor from you. I have a junior sister who really reveres the Ghost Emperor, so tomorrow, I want to let her go with you to meet the Ghost Emperor. Lin Yating, I'm afraid I can't help you. After all, if I helped you, and Master finds out, he definitely won't spare you. Hu Po coldly rejected her. She did not get angry though and continued to say with a smile, Hu Po, I heard that recently, Elder Ding Ling favors Xuanhuan more. I have a way to help you. What way? Asked Hu Po as his heart slightly sunk. I possess a 500-year-old ice ginseng. If you gave this ice ginseng to Elder Ding Ling, then he will definitely favor you more from now on. As for me, you only need to do a small favor for me. Hu Po grew silent. Lin Yating's words were too enticing, making him unable to reject her as decisively as before. Are you certain you only need me to help you with a small favor? There was a trace of suspicion in his words. He understood Lin Yating's personality too much. This woman was very cunning, and he only needed to be slightly careless to fall into her trap. I swear that you only need to let my junior sister catch a glimpse of the Ghost Emperor. Because with my junior sister's strength, she doesn't have the right to go to the competition. I guarantee that she won't do anything improper. Don't worry, Lin Yating solemnly vowed with a smile on her lips. Hu Po ground his teeth. All right, I'll believe you once. Senior brother Hu Po, I will thank you for my junior sister. Lin Yating's smile deepened, but the moment that she cast her eyes downward, a cold glint flickered in her eyes. Young Luo Feng, did you think that I wouldn't have a chance to meet the Ghost Emperor simply because you had the people of the Physician Association keep a tight watch on me? You are wrong. As long as I want to leave here, I have thousands of methods. Thinking of this, Lin Yating turned to leave the room and helped Hu Po close the door as well. Inside a simple and elegant room, the censer released an intoxicating scent. Young Luo Feng languidly sat on the wooden chair. Her brows were raised as she looked at milk tea, who was squeezing itself inside through the gap of the door. Are there any movements from Lin Yating? Squeak, squeak, milk tea called out twice before saying, Master, I visited Lin Yating's room just now and discovered that she was disguising herself. Disguising herself? Young Luo Feng started briefly and asked, why is she disguising herself? Could it be that she wants to escape? No. According to her personality, Lin Yating would not easily leave the Physician Association. After all, the Physician Association did not punish her, so why would she be willing to leave? I don't know. Milk tea's big, glittering eyes looked up. After she disguised herself, she removed her makeup and then left the room. Because I wanted to report to Master, I didn't continue following her. Chapter 650, Yun Xiao is here too. Lin Yating probably never expected that Yun Luofeng allowed her to move freely in the Physician Association because she already sent an unremarkable little hamster to secretly observe her. However, since milk tea was in a hurry to report to young Luo Feng, it did not hear the conversation between Lin Yachting and Hu Po. Young Luo Feng's fingers lightly tapped on the desk, and a wicked glint flitted through her eyes. Continue to follow Lin Yachting. If she shows signs of running away, knock her unconscious and bring her back. Before second uncle comes, not a single person from Medical City can go missing. Yes, master, milk tea obediently agreed and squeezed through the tiny crack of the door. It's already been 2 days, so Yun Xiao should come around tomorrow. A smile appeared on her lips. Since Yun Luo Feng cured all the patients within 15 minutes a few days ago, she rightly and properly came in first place. Because they still needed to distribute the other rankings, the other genius physicians had another competition. Today was the last day of the trials and tomorrow was the true competition. Master, Lin Ruobai, who was silently standing in front of Yun Luo Feng, pouted, "We have already been here at this physician association for several days. Why don't you accompany me and go out for a stroll?" No interest, Yun Luo Feng raised her brows. "Yun Xiao will come tomorrow, I need to rest sufficiently." Master, why do you need to preserve your energy for his arrival? To tease him. The corner of Lin Ruobai's mouth twitched. In front of her domineering master, her master's lover would always be the one being dominated. She could already imagine how intense these two people would be tomorrow. It will be like dry wood meeting with a fierce fire. Thinking of this, Lin Ruobai did not continue bothering Yun Luo Feng and silently retreated. The next day, daybreak. Numerous people wearing the long robes of the Physician Association had crowded the city gates since early in the morning. This caused all the inhabitants of the city to look at each other with confusion, not knowing who was coming to cause a commotion of this degree. While everyone discussed among themselves, a black figure suddenly headed toward them at a quick speed from not far away. Within the blink of an eye, the figure appeared above the city gate. In that instant, 8 words appeared in everyone's mind: unrivaled in the world, ruler of the world. The man silently stood in the air. His cold, dark eyes, which looked down on everything, swept across the people below him and unexpectedly made them feel an urge to kneel and submit to him. A mask covered his face, so the expression beneath could not be seen, but an icy arch lingered on his thin lips. It was as though no one entered the eyes of this man. Milk Tea, who was hidden in the crowd, subconsciously glanced at the disguised Lin Yachting, and a fury flashed through his big, glittering eyes. Did it turn out that this woman sneakily escaped the Physician Association for my master's man? The infatuation that passed through her eyes in a flash particularly intensified the fury in Milk Tea's heart. The current Lin Yachting was dreamily watching the man in the air. Although she had not seen the man's appearance beneath the mask, it did not stop her infatuation with him. This man conquered her with his aura alone. It also made her understand what she wanted in her life. Thankfully, Lin Yachting had no way of seeing Yun Xiao's appearance. She would definitely fall deeper and be unable to extract herself otherwise.